Hey everybody, welcome to episode 17 of Cool Chords. Today we're going to be taking a look at the second section of the incredible song by David Bowie entitled Black Star. Hope you enjoy. Alright, what a beautiful progression. And I'm breaking it down into two different parts. We have the arpeggio part, which is the main thing that the guitar plays, and then I also did it with the bass notes in the bottom, because a big part of what makes this progression so unique is the descending bass notes with a couple of slash chords in between. It creates this really beautiful movement going down chromatically, eventually leading to the 5 chord. So before we get into the specifics of that, I'm just going to break down the progression in Roman numerals without the slash chords, just so we have a frame of reference. So we're in the key of F sharp major. We start on the 1 chord, 1 major, 5 major, now flat 7 major, and then 2 minor, 4 minor, 1 major, and then flat 6 diminished, and then the 5 chord again. Okay? So even just with the root notes in the bottom, it's such a beautiful progression. But then we add these slash chords to get this descending chromatic bass line, which really kind of just makes it even better. So before we get into the bass notes, let's start out with the arpeggiated part that's happening in the upper register. So with Ben Monder on guitar, by the way, incredible guitar player. Awesome that he got on this record. So we start out with an F sharp major chord, so 3 notes, A sharp, C sharp, and F sharp. And you just play each note one at a time. Then we switch to a C sharp major chord, so the notes are G sharp, C sharp, and E sharp technically, but you can call it F if you want. But if we were going to be theoretically correct, you would call it E sharp, but I know that is a pain, so if you want to call it F, that's fine. So when we get to this chord, the pattern is, so you go down the 3 notes, then back to the 3rd string, and then the 2nd string. So we have, alright, so like I said, that movement is 1, 5. Now we do the flat 7 major, so an E major chord. So it's the same as the 1st chord, but 2 frets lower with that pattern from the 2nd chord. So G sharp, B, E, G sharp, B. So 1, 5, flat 7 major. Now this is really cool here because typically you would expect this to go to B major, right? If we're just following that same movement from the first 2 chords, that would be what your ear might think is coming, but actually what he does is he does G sharp minor instead, which is cool because it's very closely related to B major. There's only one note that has to change. The F sharp goes to G sharp. But that one note makes such a beautiful difference in the progression. So now we have, and then, so I love that. That's one of my favorite chords in the progression. So we're doing G sharp, B, D sharp in the same pattern. So now we have 1, 5, flat 7 dominant, and then the 2 minor. All right, now we get to the 4 minor, which is a B flat or a B minor chord. So that chord is middle finger on F sharp, ring finger on B, pointer finger on D. So we go same pattern as before. And that, like I said, that's the 4 minor now, right? So we're going a little bit outside of the key, creating some tension. Then we resolve down to the 1 chord, F sharp major. And now this pattern reverses. So we have F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. I'm doing my middle, ring, and pointer. And this pattern, you go down the 3 strings and then back up. So you don't do the string skip like we did in the previous patterns. So now we have, all right, so 4 minor resolving to the 1 chord. Now this is a really cool, this is probably my other favorite chord. We go to a D diminished chord, so this is really cool. So there's no D actually in this voicing, but the bass note is playing a D. So once we get to the part with the bass notes, it'll line up as like a D diminished chord. So we have ring finger on F, middle finger on A flat, pointer finger on B. Diminished 7, technically, right? Because it has the double flatted 7th right here. And this pattern we go, same pattern that we did for the F sharp major chord. And if we were going to analyze that now, what that is the flat 6 diminished, right? So because we're in the key of F sharp major, the 5 is normally C sharp, a half step above that, D, that's the flat 6. Now after the D diminished chord, we resolve to C sharp major. So we go to E sharp, G sharp, C sharp, and the pattern goes, you go up and down each note with no pause. So this is the pattern that initially happens right at the beginning of the section. So it kind of alternates throughout, like Ben Monder takes a little bit more liberties with the voicings after they establish the tonality in the opening section, but this is what's happening initially when the section first comes in. Now the thing that's so cool about this D diminished 7 to the C sharp major is D diminished 7 and C sharp major are pretty closely related, because if you look at these notes, it can be like a C sharp dominant 7 chord, right? But we have the D in the bass. So some people might think of that as a C sharp 7 flat 9 with the flat 9 in the bass, and then resolve it back to the 5 chords because you're getting that chromatic. So I would say you can call this chord either D diminished or C sharp 7 flat 9 over D without a root. So I mean, it gets kind of tedious, and it's, you know, everybody might have a different way of interpreting that, but very similar chords, basically just taking a tension chord and resolving it down to the 5 chord to set up the top again. So the whole progression now we have is 1, 5, flat 7 major, 2 minor, 4 minor, 1 chord, flat 6 diminished, and then 5. Alright, so beautiful sound, and now we're going to add the bass notes to it, which really puts the progression over the top for me. I love this descending bass movement. So these chords are kind of a pain. These are not the easiest voicings to play, but we're going to go like this. So I'm going to do an F sharp in the on the 6th string, 14th fret, and now the way I'm going to get this upper chord, instead of going like this, I'm going to do pinky, middle, and ring. Right, I was barring it for a while, but I don't know, for whatever reason I just preferred using this fingering instead, especially when I get to the 2nd chord. It makes it a little bit easier to transition. So now we go, and then we're going to go like this. That we have our C sharp major chord, and in the bottom we have E sharp. So I'm sorry that I keep calling it E sharp, but just technically that is what it would be called rather than F. So now we do this. Pointer finger on E sharp, then middle finger is going to do the G sharp on the 3rd string, pinky does C sharp, and then ring finger does E sharp again on the top. So now we have. Okay, and now we do our E major chord, slide it down another half step, and we're going to do the same voicing we did for the 1st chord, just 2 frets lower. All right, and now here's this chord I was talking about, my favorite chord, the G sharp minor, and he puts a D sharp in the bottom. So for that voicing, instead of doing the G sharp minor like this, I'm doing it with my pinky, ring, and middle, and then I put my pointer finger on the D sharp. So the first 4 chords, we have this movement. I mean, just perfect voice leading with that chromaticism in the bass, and it's so beautiful. And then it gets even better. Now we do our B minor with the D in the bass. So he's doing the third of the B minor in the bass. Just so beautiful. So for that one now, I'm doing the B minor like this. Instead of doing this fingering, I do my ring, pinky, and middle finger, and then my pointer finger is on the bottom. So basically all of these chords you have to do with your ring, middle, and pinky, which is a great exercise, a great finger exercise, because we need our pointer finger to be available for all of those bass notes. All right, and then we resolve it to F sharp major over C sharp. So this one I am barring. So I go like that. I do the F sharp major chord like this, ring, pinky, and pointer, and then I'm just barring my pointer all the way across so I can get the C sharp on the bottom. So I love that movement. Right, it's the 4 minor with the third of the 4 chord in the bass, and then the 1 chord with the 5 in the bass. Beautiful. So now the chord movement we have now is so beautiful. And then the last 2 chords, we have that D diminished chord. So now this is the one chord where I am not doing my pointer finger on the bass note. I'm doing my ring finger on D, my pinky goes up to F, middle finger goes to A flat, and pointer finger goes to B. Okay, and like I said, you can think of that as flat 6 diminished, or you can think of it as the 5 chord with the flat 9 in the bass. And then we have C sharp major. So this one, I guess, yeah, I would do this voicing. Like, just same thing I did for the first chord. Pointer finger on C sharp, and then I jump up. Pinky on E sharp, middle finger on G sharp, pointer finger on C sharp. All right, so the entire thing. Alright, so incredible progression and amazing album. I mean, for David Bowie to put this out as his last album really shortly before his death, I mean, I don't think he could have made a better album. It's just so amazing, so powerful and emotional, and every song is just so beautiful. So I would highly recommend checking out this album if you haven't. It's one of my all-time favorite albums of the 2010s. It's just perfect. But that is it. Thanks for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something. And I will see you guys at the next episode. Take care.